Welcome back, everyone, to the Layman's Law School, where three Southern gentlemen lawyers.
I like that better, Chase. Thank you.
Actually discuss some of the legal issues of the day and try to explain some of the issues that you are seeing about the law in the news in a way in which you can really kind of digest and understand. Today we're going to be talking about the Dominion lawsuit and Fox News. We talked a lot about it before on the podcast, defamation and then not having damages. This one had damages.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And I'm just excited that we've been elevated from hillbillies to Southern gentlemen.
I think that, hopefully the folks that listen and watch, please tell your friends to watch, because as our numbers go up, we get elevated in Chase's mind. When we only had one viewer, we were rednecks. Was it hillbillies or rednecks first? I can't remember.
I think they were interchangeable.
Interchangeable. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well,
first of all, before you get into anything,
all right.
This is my favorite part of Fridays. This part right
punishing
here.
me.
It's not
he was trying to breeze right through it.
I know.
Like maybe they won't remember.
No way. No chance. So, here's to another good week. This was a very good week, by the way.
Yep.
I would absolutely agree.
Firm. So, congratulations on another good week.
There you go.
Cheers.
Oh, it's like velvet.
That reminds me of that saying you say we had a good week because Reid actually pulled a rabbit out of his hat a couple of times this week, and there's a phrase that a judge used one time in describing the settlement we'd reached in the case. He said you turned chicken shit into chicken salad.
I'd say that's appropriate for what happened this week.
It happens on occasion.
Yeah, it does. It does. I mean, nobody is going to win every case, and nobody is going to lose every case. But every now and then you get one that you feel like you snuck some things by and did a better than good job for your client. And
well, and what you see is that the more effort you put into something and the harder you work for your clients, the more often
absolutely
things like that are just going to go your way.
Yep. But there are times, just like in anything, there's sometimes you do everything right. Sure. It doesn't go your way, but you got to celebrate the times that it does.
Yeah, so. And you know who's celebrating right now? That is the
fantastic segue.
Oh yes, the Dominion's legal team.
You're 100% right.
They are celebrating, jumping up and down. Well, they're on vacation. I think they're retired.
Well, yeah.
As of
whenever
last
the check
week.
clears.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fox News actually agreed to pay $787 million.
0.5.
0.5. Yeah, don't forget the 0.5.
Yeah.
$1 million to avoid a trial. And I say avoid a trial because they came to the settlement the day before opening arguments.
And that's not.
It's the day of.
Oh, it was the day of.
I think the jury showed up and they were supposed to start opening arguments, and sometime by 4 o'clock, the judge just kind of said, "All right, jury, you can go home. This case has been settled."
Right.
Well, as plaintiff lawyers, we all are. That is not uncommon. People out there probably going, "That seems crazy." A lot of times, the expression is settled on the courthouse steps.
Yep.
Because you got to push them until they offer real money. And 87 million, 0.5. That's real money.
I'm sure the initial offer was 787. And just like us, we had to get a little bit more money for our client. And we said, no, but they would accept 787, 500,000.
Well, it's a thing that occurs throughout, your life. When you're in high school and you have some sort of report due, you start working on it, the night before.
Yeah.
And in this case, it sounds like Fox News knew they had to give the report the next day, and they started.
Well, it's also kind of like it's put it into like a sports analogy. It's like if you're a high school team and you're a baseball team and you're supposed to play the Atlanta Braves, right? So for a while, you can hype yourself up.
All right.
And like, man, if we do this right, we might have a chance. Or if we do this, we could hang in there. And then you get there and you go, shit.
Yeah.
We're going to get destroyed.
These are grown men.
We got to
let's go ahead and give them the 10-0 win.
Yeah, let's
Y'all
just
won 10-0.
call it. Let's just call it.
So what this case revolves around is a defamation lawsuit. And it is centered around about 20 statements that Dominion claimed Fox News used while reporting on the 2020 election, claiming that these Dominion voting machines, Dominion is a company that makes voting machines, basically rigged the election and switched the votes from right to left and stole the election for Biden. And Dominion brought this defamation lawsuit. If you could, Shawn, explain to the viewers again, for those that weren't there for the earlier podcast, what is a defamation lawsuit?
Sure, defamation is any time you make a false statement about somebody and it causes them some type of harm, whether it harms their reputation or harms their finances, their economic interests, things like that, and the key is it has to be false,
and they have to know it's false.
Oh,
yeah, you have
absolutely.
to know you're lying. Basically, you're lying.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's a key point in this particular case, in that they chose. You can bring the case in a bunch of different venues,
Sure.
and state by state has different rules about protections for the news, for statements against public figures.
A lot of leeway with the news and newspaper. I mean, I remember in law school studying those cases. I mean, newspapers and they're held to a higher standard, but at the same time, there's a ton of get out of jail free cards for news and newspapers.
Yeah.
Well, and they have their First Amendment rights, and their duty under their profession is to report.
Right.
And they've been given broad latitude to report. So even if they bring Reid Sanders on the show, and Reid Sanders is saying some crazy stuff, they get a lot of latitude when it comes to that.
Right? Yeah, and there's something even called the neutral reportage defense, where even if you report the false statement, as long as you do it in a disinterested, sort of non-biased way, you can still get away with it.
Which I'm sure that's what Fox did.
Yeah, well.
Did they not?
Fair and balanced. Well,
I think that's it. That let you get on to it, Chase, but that is a bigger issue in our news in general, is that they don't really report the news; they report opinions. So
sure,
Anyway,
so in this case, what happened is that this was a case where discovery actually swayed the day.
Yep.
And discovery is a tool that lawyers use to actually get evidence in a case. There used to be, big surprises in trials and stuff like that back in the day.
Right.
Nowadays, we can request documents, we can depose witnesses and find out what they're going to say before we ever get to trial.
There's no Matlock moments anymore.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah. Like you say, there are exceptions, but you don't have you need me on that wall, you want me on that wall.
No.
And he's got the pilot coming in to testify, and he really didn't.
Yeah.
None of that happens anymore.
I'm going to try and get one day. Break somebody on the stand. But no, in this case, ultimately what came to light was the actual text messages and emails of the Fox executives that actually damned them. In particular, Tucker Carlson's text messages and emails between him and some of the other actual reporters. And it's funny because they explain it as between Tucker Carlson, Sean Hannity, and the news division of Fox News. There's a separate. They declare themselves as being separate, within the actual company. So just so you know, Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, they're actually not claiming that they're news. At all. Yeah, they are not a part of a news channel.
There was a case against Tucker Carlson. I don't remember the year.
It was McDougal.
Okay, and his defense was that he was entertainment.
That's right.
He was not a news broadcaster. He was simply like a what's the man who just passed? Jerry
Seinfeld.
He was like he was a satirist. Jerry Springer.
Jerry Springer. Yes, he just God rest his soul. But he was essentially saying, "I'm Jerry Springer." That's basically what he was saying. That was his defense, at least.
Well, yeah, it's actually in the court filings by his lawyers. They made the argument that no reasonable person could take
him serious.
Tucker Carlson seriously, and therefore Karen McDougal could not have been harmed by his statements. So,
he was essentially saying he's the Daily Show.
Essentially,
he's a comedy show, and it's all for fun, and it's pretend. But if you ever seen the show, that is not how
he portrays it. Exactly. So, like one of the texts that he was sending between. I think it was between him and Laura Ingraham. He basically said that this Dominion voting system is, all these allegations are bull crap. You know, he's like, this isn't real. Then he went on later that same night after sending that text saying that, you know, people are saying that these votes are being switched by these, you know. It's a very tricky turn of phrase, and
right.
you know, it's like people are talking about the fact that this, right. and this is not quoting anybody. Sure. You know, they're just putting it out there. And Dominion, you can see how this would harm them. Okay, the crux of their business, the only thing that's really important about the service they provide is the security of and the validity of the vote count.
That's right.
That's produced by it. So you can see how that would affect them in a very, very serious way. And at the outset of this, I think the company was worth somewhere around between 80 and 220 million, depending on who you talk to about what the stock's worth. But
so now they're worth close to $1 billion.
So this
after
was
the settlement.
This was a pretty nice payday.
Yeah,
very nice payday.
And Chace, I don't know where all you want to get into, but I would like to talk about just the way that the lawyers for the Dominion company went about this procedure. And so one of the things that I found very interesting is that the plaintiff, Dominion, filed a summary judgment motion. And we talk about summary judgment motions a lot.
It's very rare that a plaintiff files
it. I mean, we have to respond to summary judgment motions all the time. And a summary judgment motion is essentially one party saying, even if you look at the evidence most favorable to them, no matter how you look at it, there's not enough evidence for your claim to hold water. It's always, not always as we see here, but 99.9% of the time, it is the defendant who files a summary judgment motion. This one was Dominion, the plaintiff, filing a summary judgment motion because they said, with all of this evidence, there's no way that there's a defense.
Yeah.
Even if you look at it in the most favorable light to Fox News, it's so damning that we win just on principle.
Yeah, and I think that this is an important distinction to make in that the crux of a summary judgment motion is the judge has to determine if the parties agree about what the facts are.
Right. Undisputed facts or evidence.
Regardless of any case, there are pieces of that case that there's not a fight about.
Right.
We can all agree that this took place, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And so that's kind of what you're saying.
Exactly. And so in this situation, the judge, when he was looking at the motion for summary judgment, determined that Fox didn't disagree.
Right.
Didn't dispute the fact that there was no evidence that these Dominion voting machines had switched the votes. They said that is absolutely true. There's no evidence out there.
Right.
Okay. And there's no evidence that we didn't make these statements claiming that it actually was switching them.
Sure.
And so in that situation where there's no fight or no argument about what those facts are, there's nothing for a jury to make a decision about. And that is when a judge can come in, and it's basically like a paper trial.
Yep.
You write out that scenario to a judge, explaining to them, we're not disagreeing about this. We agree on this. This should be, as a matter of law, the facts that are established in this case. And that's what happened. And so the only thing that was left to be decided after that motion for summary judgment was decided was, one, the judge didn't make a decision about malice. Okay?
Sure.
All right. So malice is basically the intent to actually harm the person. It was done purposefully to harm that person. And it was that was still in dispute. And the judge says the jury can decide that. Aside from that, the only thing that was left was to decide how bad
what the damages was.
Yeah, Dominion had been damaged by it. Right.
But and going back to just the process of it, what I was impressed about is, this wasn't just something that came about. This was a plan by the plaintiff attorneys, Dominion's attorneys, to have this process and to get ahead of things, right? And by filing the summary judgment, obviously they want to win. But even if they didn't, that summary judgment motion is public record, and they have all of these damning facts against Fox that is now into the public. And now you're Fox, and you're really behind the eight ball because you're fighting an uphill battle in that the public is already said you're guilty, essentially, because they have all this evidence. And the public doesn't know the elements of the law that you have to prove because it doesn't matter to them. So, but you're already the bad guy. And so Dominion did a great job. Usually the plaintiff lawyer doesn't have that kind of ability, but they jumped out ahead of it, and now it's like everybody hates Fox and what they did and going after them. And so that was very, very smart and tactical.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's a great day for the defense as well, because they did their clients 100% correct in the case.
Absolutely.
What had happened in this particular case is that when they turned over all of these emails and these text messages, even the ones that we have access to, right? There were others that were turned over that were redacted. And the judge had made a ruling that there has to be what they call a special master appointed.
Right.
To basically, because what happens is when you request
take a look at them and review them.
Right. If you request a document from somebody, right, and you're like, I need all of the information related to the defamation, Dominion voting, all the text messages, emails, right? Well, the other side gets to decide what is responsive. In other words, what I have to turn over to this person, right?
And then so if I give you something and I redacted it, how do you know if what I redacted
is actually relevant?
Is correct.
Exactly. And so what happened is the Dominion team, legal team, actually asked for the judge to appoint a special master. He agreed that the special master was going to get to see the unredacted version of all these things, and he was going to get to decide whether it was relevant or not to the case.
Right.
Those were all, elements that weigh into a defense team's advice to a defendant in a case like this. And with the stuff that was actually already revealed in the text message, there was stuff that was terribly misogynist, racist.
Yep.
It was, and it's part of the reason why I think Tucker's no longer with Fox. It's in part because of that. And when they picked the jury, like you said, they'd already picked the jury. They had 6 women, and they had a number of minorities on the jury.
It was
and
not
so that was
going
to
go well.
No. And we like to think that people make a decision based on facts and not whether or not you hurt my feelings with what you said or whatever. But as
we're all human.
We all know that is not how it works in the real world.
Well, and it's some of it is just unconscious.
Yeah.
Everybody sits in there and says, you know what, the judge told me that I'm to make my decision based on the facts and evidence and testimony that I see before me here in court. But unconsciously, you can't get rid of the fact of information that you have already heard about or, some biases that anybody has are always going to lead into your decision-making process, regardless of whether you think they are or not.
Good, bad, or ugly. Every single person that's ever lived has a bias of some sort, and it's just the way you were raised, where you come from, where you grew up. You just have a bias of something. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So I agree that these, not only was it smart for the defense, I think that it was smart for both sides to take it because it's a lot of money and it's real money, as we talked about. But if they didn't take it, or if the defense didn't offer that, they could have got just absolutely destroyed.
Well,
not only by the verdict, but by what came out or would have come out in that trial.
That's right. That's a new development that has really occurred, I think, I guess, since OJ, but it's really ramped up with Johnny Depp's trial, and then you had a number of people watching Gwyneth Paltrow's trial, the Murdoch trial. Well, this was scheduled to be a 6-week trial. So there was going to be quite a bit of evidence that came out. It was going to, of course, every other news station that wants, Fox News' head was going to cover it in depth every day. And so the defense team did a great job in actually recommending that they not have all of that information out there because of like you said, the damage. So do you give over $750 million when you might actually have to pay that at the end of this lawsuit anyway, and avoid how many millions of dollars that you lose just because you're going to lose viewers, you're going to lose credibility. You're going to expose, that your posts that are cash cows at the moment, are misogynist, racist frauds.
Not to mention the legal fees that you would incur. I mean, there's dozens and dozens of attorneys working for Fox News for this particular case.
Just this one
in
case.
a 6-week trial.
Oh man.
I mean, you could rack up easily several $1 million worth of legal fees.
Easily.
Yeah, because I mean, in a situation like this with this kind of money at stake, there's going to be a team of lawyers that are doing this. They're going to be working around the clock just on this. And when you have that kind of money,
similar to the Hawk Law Group,
exactly.
That's why we
when you
call
have
it
that
the group,
yeah, when you have that kind of money on the line, you don't want, you know, how do I explain? You don't want discount skydiving.
Sure.
You know, you don't want the deal on jumping out of the plane because you have the
reminds me
used
of
parachute, you know.
Your dad, not to bring up a touchy subject, but when he was a young man, after you were born, obviously, he told me about he got a vasectomy. And Vic, always the bargain shopper, found a guy to do it for $150, but you had to bring your own cotton swabs and own gauze. And I said, Vic, are you crazy? That's something I'm going to pay extra for. Like, I want the best of the best. No, it was good, man. It was fine. So,
and after Chace, there was four children.
I have a little sister. How about that? All right. Well, the last thing I want to touch upon, we only got a few more minutes here, was the good decision, I think. I mean, Dominion, they sued for $1.6 billion in this case, and they took basically half that.
Yeah.
And there's a decision that has to be made by every plaintiff's attorney about the appeal and the appeal process.
Right.
And I think, you know, let's just talk a little bit about like how an appeal comes about, and then sort of the time frame for something like that, and the costs of doing something like that.
Expensive.
Yes.
Essentially, you know, let's say that they went through this 6-week trial, incurred all of these expenses. And let's say the jury came back with the exact amount, $787,500,000, and then Fox decided to appeal that. Well, both sides are going to incur costs as a result of that appeal. Right. It's going to take a year, several years, and that could be the money still sitting in the pockets of Fox News at that point.
And our economy's not doing great, and the interest. The discount rate is what, 6% now?
Yep.
So that means your money,
you paying interest
every
on
dollar you have is worth 94 cents the next year. So you know, if you're appealing things, then basically you're giving the other side interest-free loan, so to speak.
Well, and we even see cases where after a verdict is reached, a settlement is reached
absolutely
after the fact
in a lower amount for us to avoid that.
I think people would be. That's a good point. I think a lot of people would be shocked by that. But you get a verdict. Let's call it $100,000 to make it easy, and you know it's going to be appealed. You and the defense lawyer would get together and say, "Look, if y'all don't appeal this, then we'll take 80."
Yeah,
correct.
And that happens a lot. It really does. Which is, I think, probably would shock a lot of people that are outside the legal arena.
Yeah.
Bird in the hand is better than two in the bush.
Yeah, and one of the other things, little tidbits that people most of the time don't know, is that once you start to get to the appeal part of it, if you lose, in many states, the losing party of the appeal has to pay the attorney's fees and costs of the other. So it can be a very costly, time-consuming. I know in South Carolina, it's, you know, in Georgia, I think it's 2 years now if you're going to appeal it. But the appeal process, it essentially, everybody's like, well, how can you just appeal it? You just you want to do over? Right. Well, no, that's not that's not really how it works. If you can imagine, just like another sports analogy, if an umpire, that's the judge.
Yep.
He's calling balls and strikes. He's saying, yes, that evidence can come in, or no, that evidence cannot come in. Yes, I am giving partial summary judgment on this particular issue. No, I am not, right? If he makes a decision that the appeals court finds is material and important and actually swayed how the case actually was determined, then they will, what they call, remand it, and they'll send it back down to be done again. And that's how the appeal occurs, is when there's a problem, there's an issue. And so if you can imagine the Braves playing the Yankees in the World Series, and then the umpire calls a strike when it should have been a ball at ninth inning, and then they can call up to the commissioner and say, hey, we want to do the ninth inning again.
Right. Sure. And the other side of that is you have errors that occur that, to use your analogy, the commissioner says, yeah, that should have been called a strike and it was called a ball.
But it was 13 to 1.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It was 13 to 1.
Made a
It
difference.
wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
yeah, it's really true. It has to be a legal error that really made a difference in the case.
Yeah, it would have. If this wouldn't have happened, then it would have changed something.
Yeah.
You know,
or that it at least could have.
Could have. Exactly.
We see, you know,
Exactly.
so many cases that, you know, in reading, you know, cases just to stay up to date
Sure.
and current that are, yes, this was wrong. Yes, this is wrong. But you know, the evidence was overwhelming on these points. Therefore, it wouldn't have made a difference.
it wasn't material. Yeah,
drop in the bucket.
All right.
Well, one last thing on that, Chase, is that what I really thought the Dominion, like you said, side did a good job, not only because the appeal process and all that, is that they essentially they asked for 1.6. That doesn't mean anything. A jury can come back and give $18 billion. They can, or they can come back and give zero.
Yeah.
So the amount of risk to move forward when you have $787 million and your company's worth at maximum 200, that's a risk you cannot take. You cannot take. And that is the lawyers doing a good job for Dominion as their counsel saying, look, this is a risk. I know you want to go forward, and I know that you're mad, and out of principle, you want to show the world how bad that they lied and mistreated you. But I have to advise you, you need to take this money because you still have a risk of losing.
Yeah. And I just the winners in this case, of course, are Dominion, but I would also say is the plaintiff's counsel and defense counsel for Fox and the plaintiff's counsel for Dominion, in that they all, I think, did right by their,
I agree.
in this particular situation, did right by their clients and advised them to avoid a trial and try to get some sort of resolution to this before it became a public. I mean,
regardless of how the outcome would have gone in a jury, it was going to be much worse for both sides.
Yeah,
sure.
Through a trial.
Costly.
Yep.
Well, that's going to do it for us today. Thank you all for listening. Join us next time. We're going to be talking about Clarence Thomas and his possible impeachment.